Last week we received a very interesting and valid question from a gentleman via the comments box on the bottom of one of our recently uploaded videos, and the question was quite simply: can you fit an air regulator into a semi or fully automatic air rifle? And the very simple answer is yes, it's quite possible, and there's no reason why you shouldn't fit a regulator into a semi or fully automatic air rifle. However, obviously it has to be the correct regulator for the job. So in relation to our regulator, as long as the internal diameter of the air reservoir is between 23mm and 32mm in diameter, then we would have a regulator to suit, and you could fit one into one of those rifles. In relation to all regulators and different manufacturers' regulators, on some of them they wouldn't be suitable for semi-automatic or fully automatic, and this is just simply due to the speed of airflow in and out of the regulator. So here at the front of our regulator we've got a 4.3mm air intake hole, and if the regulator is set to high power, that's fully open and not obscured at all by the pressure adjuster screw, and that 4.3 hole runs true all the way through and out the front face of the piston, and so there's a very fast airflow through the regulator. So the regulator can actually operate far faster than you're ever going to have a fully automatic air rifle running at, because if you think about it, unhindered air, which isn't pushing a pellet out of a barrel, is travelling at around, I think, about 1700 feet per second, and so the distance which that air has got to travel is only about the distance, that sort of distance there, and it's unhindered, 43mm long, 4.3mm diameter hole. And so when you take that into consideration against your airgun pellet and how far that's got to travel up the barrel, or how far the pellet has to travel before it dumps some air into the automatic recock mechanism of the rifle, and how fast the recock mechanism then fires forwards, the speed of the regulator oscillating back and forward is way in excess of that. So that would be quite simple to fit a regulator similar to ours, or one of ours, into a semi or fully automatic air rifle. Now, the reason I say this isn't the case with all regulators, because even though air is moving excessively fast, and even through the smallest of gaps the refill time of a regulator is pretty quick, you couldn't do it with all regulators. So we'll just explain why. Well, I'll just quickly recap. We've got a 4.3mm intake, and then a short straight tube to the output hole on the front of the piston. So that's a very quick and easy route for the air to go through. Now, if you take that in relation to other regulators, and we've chosen this BSA regulator for the reason that it's not another retrofit manufacturer's, because I don't want people to think I'm putting down other people's products. So we've chosen this BSA because it only fits in their BSA and they don't market it for anything else. But I'll give an example why you couldn't fit a regulator of a similar design into a semi or fully automatic air rifle. So hopefully I'm going to zoom the camera in so we can get a bit better close up for what I'm going to talk about. So, as we just spoke about with our regulator, the speed at which the air passes through the regulator and fills up the outlet valve chamber, and this speed is exceptionally quick, far quicker than a semi or fully automatic air rifle operates. However, this isn't the case with all regulators, and some actually have a measurable refill time. So it'd be quite easy to rig up a device such as an oscilloscope or a microphone and place it next to the gun and be able to time how long it takes the regulator to let the air through into the outlet valve chamber. Now, this is a BSA regulator, and in the past we've made some regulators of a similar design to this, and it was possible to hear the regulator letting the air through into the outlet valve chamber, and people with a few BSAs and some of these regulators that we manufactured said they sound very similar to an old-fashioned 35mm electric camera wind on. So every time you pull the trigger you'd hear a little st So you know, you could probably refill the regulator probably 3 or 4 times a second, but the refill time was quite slow. So this is the reason why it would be not possible or a bad idea to try and get a regulator with a similar design in a semi or fully automatic air rifle. So here on the BSA, the initial air intake from this, which is the high pressure side, is through these 2 little gaps. Now once the air's gone through those gaps, it has to make its way round the thread. So the air comes through under the gap, and then it has to go round the thread, and then it gets, let me press that back down to the top here, and once it's at the top, it goes across via this little slot. Hopefully you can see that, and then there's a very small screw, and again the air then has to pass around the thread of this small screw, which obviously isn't a very big air gap whatsoever. So if we take this component out, you can't see down there sadly, but that screws in fairly tight up until where the thread stops. So there's only an excessively small surface area or gap for the air to get round, bleed round that screw and out of the other side. And then once it's done that, inside here there's a spring and a ball bearing, and they fit in here, so they're normally pressed up inside there, so it just travels around the outside of the ball bearing, and then down in here there's a little rod which dislodges the ball bearing from its seat to let the air through. So if we turn it round, the air then comes out of the regulator, if I can see the exact spot, but it comes out under this thread down here. So if we unscrew this component, there we go. So there you can see where the air then, once it's through the coming through the regulator, open and shut valve, it passes down this slot to refill the outlet valve chamber. But before it gets there, oops, come on, you've got this little rod. So this is the little rod which lifts the ball bearing off of its rubber seat. Now as you can see, hopefully down inside there, there's quite a small hole where the air passes through, except that's not the full size because this rod is an exceptionally good fit. So again, there's a very small area for the air to pass through, and obviously once it's passed through the hole, it's still got to pass around the outside of the rod, which is a very good fit into the bore there. And so the time it takes the air to enter the regulator, wind round the thread, go down the small thread through to refill the outlet valve chamber is quite, relatively quite slowly. So a gun like this, you'd probably fire the first shot if there's a regulator like this fitted in your gun, and then by the time it got to the 3rd or 4th semi-automatic or fully automatic shot, the power would have dropped down considerably. And so if you are looking to fit a regulator into a PCP air rifle, you need to look at the speed of the airflow through the regulator. So as a bit of a sales pitch, you could always fit one of ours because there is a large air intake and straight through port. Or if you don't want to fit one of ours, then you need to be looking for another regulator with a similar throughput of air, something that's got a straight through tube, a large intake and a large outlet hole, and that's what you require.